Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. That is Lamentations 3, verses 21 through 23. I am your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. I am here to encourage and equip you for your parenting journey. As a mom myself of 8, 5 through adoption, all with trauma, including our 2 youngest, now in their 20s, both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome when they were little. I, too, live and navigate the challenges of raising children with trauma histories and prenatal exposure. So my hope is that you will find this podcast an invaluable resource for your parenting journey. And this week, I'm super excited. We are going to be completing our nutrition series with Dr. Jerrod Brown. And just as a reminder, before we get to him, he will be presenting with slides. So if you want to see the slides, you can go to our YouTube channel. That would be the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel. All of the video versions of this podcast exist there. Justice for Orphans is the nonprofit that I founded many years ago. And everything that we do with this podcast, all of our FASD resources, everything adoption and foster care journey related, comes under the umbrella of JFO. So all of our stuff is under their YouTube channel. So you just have to go to Justice for Orphans on YouTube. You will see our episodes and you will see the series with Dr. Jerrod Brown, and he's going to share his slides. So you can just listen through, like you would regularly just listen to a podcast for the audio. But if you want to see the slides, you can go back through, even with a notebook, and take notes, because he just gives us a wealth of information and practical application and stuff that we just don't want you to miss. So you want to check that out. But before we get to Dr. Brown, just a reminder, my new devotional book. And guys, look, if you're watching the video, you're in for a treat, because here it is. Here is the cover. This is Soul Care Saturday, 52 devotions for foster and adopted moms. You don't have to start it on a Saturday. You can start it any day of the week, but it's one a week. Of course, you could do more than that, but I know we are very busy. And sometimes if we can get one devotion in a week, that's a huge accomplishment. There's also some additional verses that if you did have the time and you wanted to kind of dig deeper into the scripture and the message of the devotion for that week. But it's not only got the scriptures, of course, but it is beautifully, if you can see this, beautifully illustrated. It's got the verse of the week, the devotional that I wrote, a reflection, and it also has each week a breath prayer based on the scripture, so that you can practice breath prayer, which is really just praying scripture, and a spot for you to journal if you want to write in it and do your going deeper verses. So it's super beautiful. It is now available on Amazon, but we are giving away 2 free signed copies throughout the month of January. So during these 4 episodes with Dr. Jerrod Brown, in the show notes, there is a link. And if you click on the link, it will take you to a form that you'll fill out online, which just is your name, your email address, and your mailing address, so I can mail you the book if you win. And then at the end of the month, after this last episode airs, so we're going to wait till the end of January, we're going to, pull out of a hat type thing, 2 names out of all of the submissions, and those 2 winners will receive a free signed copy of the book. So make sure you click on that link in the show notes so that you have your chance to win. If you don't win, you can still go to Amazon and get a copy. And I know that you will love it and you'll be blessed. We've gotten almost 30 reviews so far, and the book just released, and they're all 5-star reviews. And adoptive and foster moms are chiming in on just how much of a vital resource it is for them. So I hope that you will check that out. And for more of our other resources, you can also go to justicefororphansny.org, click on the adoption and foster care journey, and you'll find all of the things. My blog, every month I post a new blog post. So one just went up, so you want to check that out. And then, of course, all of our training, the FASD training that I offer online and in person is listed there, as well as how to join the Hope for the FASD Journey online support community. I love connecting with you all. Love it when I'm at a conference and somebody comes to the table and says, I listen to your podcast. I love that. I'm blessed by that. So if you're going to be out and about at any of these conferences, make sure that you stop by the table and see me, attend my workshop, and I will be coming up. I will be coming up. A lot of my conferences are coming up for 2026, right around the corner. So this episode drops towards the end of January, and I will be in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at the Filled Retreat. That's January 30th through February 1st. I'm leading a breakout session on FASD, and I'll have an information table. I'll have my books. I will also be, if you are in Alabama and the Birmingham area, I will be at the church at Brook Hills in Birmingham on Saturday, February 21st. And then in March, I will be at Mobilize, Ohio, March 21st. That's at the North Canton Chapel, where I will be leading 3 breakout sessions. I'll have an information table, have my books there too. And on April 30th through May 2nd, I will be at the Renew Retreat. That is a retreat for foster and adoptive parents. I will be doing 2 breakout sessions there. And again, have my table, have my resources. So I pray that you will stop by, take advantage of any of these opportunities, and stop by and say hi. And of course, I'm still filling up my calendar for 2026. I haven't even listed the places where I'll be this fall. But if you are interested in having me come to speak at, to your group, to lead an FASD training, to speak to your foster and adoptive moms at a retreat, whatever it is, contact me, because I do travel. I'm happy to do in person, and I also do online. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I will be leading an online 2-day, 15 hours of content live online with a school. I'm going to be working with a school in New Mexico, their special education program. Their teachers want that training on FASD. So we scheduled one just for their group. So online, in person, reach out to me. My email address is in the show notes, Sandra Flach at justicefororphansny.org. And you email me directly. I get every email. I open them myself and I read them, and I'll respond to you. So if you're interested in having me come to you, or if you're interested in setting up something online for your group, reach out, because I would love to be able to do that. Now, to today's content, we have our returning favorite doctor, Dr. Jerrod Brown, with us to unpack another topic vital to the adoption and foster care journey. We're focusing on nutrition all month long, and this is our 4th and final episode on nutrition, where we are going to zero in on autism spectrum disorder. We have covered nutrition from the perspective of how it affects the brains and bodies of people who have experienced trauma, who have FASD, who have ADHD. And today we're going to take a closer look at autism as well. And I know, because personal experience and as well as our support group, many of us are parenting kids with all of the above. They have, multiple diagnoses. Our kids have all experienced some level of trauma. They may be prenatally exposed, as well as have an autism diagnosis, as well as having an ADHD diagnosis. So all of the things. So this topic is definitely relevant to all of us, and Dr. Brown is going to present that to us. So Dr. Brown has 5 PhDs and specializes in topics related to autism, FASD, confabulation, suggestibility, trauma, other life adversities, alexithymia, executive dysfunction, criminal recidivism, traumatic brain injury, youth fire setting, and the list goes on. You can check out his full lengthy bio, which is now on our website, along with dozens of other bonus episodes that we have done with Dr. Jerrod Brown. You can go right to our website because we have them all in one special spot there. So you want to make sure that you do that. So now let us dive into today's topic. Please welcome back Dr. Jerrod Brown. Welcome back, Dr. Brown.
Sandra, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and I know we're wrapping up our series today.
Yes, and we're just so grateful that you've taken the time to be with us all month long and bring this amazing series on nutrition. I know today we are tackling nutrition and eating challenges in kids with autism. So I'm just going to hand it off to you and you can take us to school.
You bet. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me back, Sandra. And again, my name's Jerrod. Here's my email address on this first slide. If you're hearing this just by audio, I am showing my PowerPoint slides. So I believe definitely check out Sandra's YouTube channel as well. You'll be able to see the slides visually. So this is part 4 of a 4-part series where we have taken a pretty deep dive into a lot of subtopics related to diet, nutrition, eating challenges among folks with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, ADHD, kids with trauma histories, attachment problems. And today we're wrapping it up with a discussion on how this is related to folks on the autism spectrum. Here is a copy of my brief professional biography. I have a PhD in psychology, 6 different master's degrees, multiple different graduate certificates, including one in applied pediatric nutrition. One of my master's degrees is in applied clinical nutrition. And what we're talking about today is just general education. So please talk to your healthcare provider, a registered dietitian, a licensed nutritionist before implementing anything when it is in the world of like diet and nutrition. And here's a little bit more about me, some of my other certifications, professional training programs I've completed. I also have completed a certification in functional nutrition, a couple different certifications related to gut health, and I've done some other work and certifications in the area of sleep and amongst others. So we'll talk about these things today as well. So when we get into the weeds here, autism is probably my second area of focus. I do a lot of consulting. I've written on the topic. I've been on many podcasts talking about autism. And when we talk about autism, the research says it's the fastest growing neurodevelopmental disorder in the United States. I think the rates right now are 1 in 33 or 1 in 31. Some new research came out recently. So look at that. If you compare autism to FASD, FASD is at 1 in 20, but the rates of autism have climbed so much in the past few years. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But when you work with folks with autism or any child with any kind of neurodevelopmental disorder, or neurodivergent kind of condition, we also need to be aware that these kids, teenagers and adults also have many, many talents and attributes and skills. Unfortunately, a lot of the work I do is focused on the disability side of thing, but we need to capitalize on the good stuff as well. So when we think about autism, it is a true spectrum. I have consulted on cases where a client has autism and they're in a group home and they need care 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of their life. I've consulted on cases where people have autism and they live independently, but they still have some challenges. But when we think of autism, always think about these factors here: social communication deficits, repetitive and fixated interest, theory of mind deficits, sensory processing issues. Most people with autism also have gut health issues, and the overwhelming majority of folks with autism also have feeding, dietary eating challenges, the research says. When we think about social communication deficits, if you see on this slide here, there's a lot going on. This is not an all-encompassing list, but I've seen every one of these combinations on cases I've consulted on. So why am I showing you this? Well, these are a lot of factors to take into account when we start thinking about dietary factors, nutrition. If you work with a speech language communication pathologist, an occupational therapist, very important they understand all of these moving parts because these are factors we need to take into account when developing a holistic intervention plan to helping folks with autism eat better and just understand the importance of diet and nutrition. I just wanted to show us this here visually. I give a lot of talks on this topic to different groups, and the question always comes up, well, what's the cause of autism? Well, we don't know what the cause is, but there is research out there looking at so many different variables and factors. Genetic factors are being looked at. The age of the mom when she gave birth to the child is being looked at. Prenatal alcohol, drug, tobacco, trauma exposure is a factor that's looked at in this literature. Extremely low birth weight, maternal nutrition practices is being looked at. Exposure to different kinds of insecticides and pesticides and environmental contaminants. Again, there's so many things being looked at with this. There's thousands of studies published every year on autism related topics. So will we ever find out the true cause of autism? Probably not. But it's a combination of environmental and genetic factors, the research says. Most folks with autism also have co-occurring different kinds of conditions, not just mental health conditions, but medical health comorbidities are very, very common as well. And this is not an all-encompassing list, but folks with autism are way more likely to be dealing with depression, anxiety, sleep issues, obsessive compulsive disorder, language impairments, eating disorders, epilepsy, and the list goes on and on and on. When somebody has autism and the symptoms of autism aren't taken into account, we're not aware of like the role that blood sugar dysregulation plays, poor eating practices, poor sleep habits, confusion. In some cases, those things can trigger external manifestations of problematic behaviors. It can trickle down into contributing to more sleep issues, hyperactivity problems, impulse control issues, self-injurious behaviors, sensory overload, and diet and nutrition, or the lack thereof, can absolutely exacerbate some of these things. So helping the individual eat better, get better sleep, manage gut health, manage their blood sugar levels is so, so important. Sandra, before I get into the heart of today's talk, I'll kick it back to you, my friend.
Yeah, I was just looking at the list and for our audience, right? So many of us, as being foster and adoptive parents, we have kiddos who have, they have the trauma history. They also have an ADHD diagnosis. Many of our kids also were prenatally exposed to alcohol. So there's the FASD, and many of them also have an autism diagnosis. And then on the flip side of that, I know people who don't have any of the trauma, FASD, or any of that, but yet, they have a child with autism. So it's not like autism, you have to have the trauma and the FASD to have autism but among our population of kids, there's all of these overlapping diagnoses. Is that common? Do you see that?
Yeah, oh, definitely. There's been cases I've consulted on too where the client has actually had an autism and FASD diagnosis. So
Yeah.
I've actually given a talk on that very topic a few years ago on the similarities and differences between like autism and FASD. And there's I don't know, there's probably 20, 30 articles now that have looked at the similarities and differences between the two. And the same can be said with ADHD. There's a lot of overlap between all of these. It gets murky and it gets complicated the more of these diagnoses somebody has. And it gets even more complicated if we're talking about fractured attachment patterns, poor eating practices, poor sleep habits, gut health issues. It just can mimic a lot of symptoms too, or make underlying symptoms way more worse.
Mm.
So the majority of people with autism, according to the research, and it's all over the map, really indicate that feeding challenges are about 5 times higher in children with autism compared to the general population. What are some of the more common feeding behavioral problems noted in the research literature specific to autism that we want to be aware of? Well, in some cases, it could trigger aggressive behavior, depending on a variety of factors. It could trigger more crying behavior. It could contribute to that child turning their head more and just refusing to eat. It could result in that child taking in the food, but then spitting it out, or pushing the food away when you're trying to serve the food, or running away from the table. These are all things supported in the literature. And if you're seeing this visually, if you're looking for more readings, look at the bottom of my slides and you'll find the full citation here. Other things we'd want to be aware of. This is all science-based. This is a good article that came out in 2025 that talks about, here's some problematic eating behaviors that are more common among people with autism. Maybe there's a food fixation. I am very aware of cases where the person with autism will only eat chicken nuggets or only eat this food, and they have very limited range of food. And when that's the case and goes on for a long period of time, that person may not be getting the proper vitamins and minerals. And if they don't ever eat fruits or vegetables, that is a whole nother can of worms to be aware of. As you can see here on this slide here, there's 8 different variables you'd want to take into account. So again, highly encourage you, if you're listening to this, definitely check out the visual on YouTube as well. It'll show you some really good visuals here. So other things to be aware of when we're looking at this through an autism and unhealthy dietary patterns lens. Some research really leans in the direction that a lot of people on the autism spectrum may snack on more unhealthy foods. They may have less protein intake, higher consumptions of sugar sweetened beverages, higher intakes of processed energy dense foods. So maybe that's going to the gas station or a vending machine and getting these foods that have a ton of calories, but they're highly processed, and a reduced intake of fruits and vegetables. This is one article of many, just to highlight the fact that we need to be aware of the topic of sugar sweetened beverages. These are a threat to human health. I feel very comfortable naming that. Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong. I think, did we do an episode on just sugar sweetened beverages and how that impacts the health and brains of kids?
Yes, we did.
Okay, definitely check that out if you want to look at that. That'll get you thinking. If you are drinking a lot of sugar sweetened beverages yourself, there's so much research out there that shows that these are not good for our brain and our body. This is an article that basically highlights, and this is one study of many. We know how research is. I mean, studies can differ, but this particular study found that among the children and adolescents in this particular study who had autism, a high percentage of them omitted vegetables. They didn't have a lot of vegetables, and vegetables, we know, they are medicine. There's no way around it. This is a case I actually consulted on, and I didn't consult on this for a nutrition lens, it's more a behavioral health lens, but this person was on the autism spectrum, and this is what was going on with this client. Lower functioning, so had lower IQ, had very limited cooking skills, ate a ton of junk food. This person would not have just one cookie. They would eat the whole box. So like 15 cookies in the setting. Had a lot of acid reflux, a lot of heartburn. This, I suspect in this case, this client had a lot of behavioral problems. Heartburn triggered a ton of behavioral problems in this client. This person had a lot of impulse control problems, very rarely drank water. They only drank like sugar sweetened beverages and things like that. So I suspect the client was probably dealing with low grade dehydration on some level. Excessive screen time exposure would bring food into his room and then leave it there for days and days on end, and then bugs would form and a whole nother can of worms there. So this is an extreme situation, but it was a case I consulted on. This next section is like, how do we take this information and apply it to like an intake, a screening and interviewing consideration process? So anytime you work with somebody with autism, we need to be aware that pretty much in all cases, the person is going to have some level of executive function impairment, theory of mind deficits, which is perspective taking deficits, weak central coherence, which is basically having more tunnel vision and having a hard time seeing the forest through the trees, and a higher level of emotional recognition problems. Half of folks with autism or more may have alexithymia, the research says. From an intervention lens, so maybe you're a professional, you're a caregiver going to a professional, share this link with them. Hopefully there's some insights in here that can help all professionals just have a more holistic view. But in the autism and nutrition literature, from an intervention standpoint, it says you have to be aware of poor working memory and organizational deficits. Those are two big variables to consider during the development of a intervention plan. Working memory is our brain's post-it note. It is a component of executive function. Most kids with a neurodevelopmental disorder, kids with a lot of trauma in their histories, brain-based impairments are going to have working memory deficits. So these are some red flag indicators of a working memory deficit. Having a hard time focusing, problems with test taking, problems with inconsistent performance. They're on it one day, they're off the next, being really impatient, difficulty with multi-step instructions, and the list goes on. A lot of people with autism, when we're talking poor dietary practices and other kinds of concerns, are going to likely have more emotional regulation problems. So if you look at the big puzzle here, if you are working with someone who has autism and they have a lot of emotional dysregulation problems, we can't point to one cause. The research says we need to look at alexithymia. We need to be aware of theory of mind deficits. We need to be aware of sensory processing issues. We need to be aware of blood sugar imbalances, gut health issues. Plenty of research shows that people with autism have much higher rates of constipation, amongst other gut health issues. Nutritional deficiencies, again, maybe the person never eats any vegetables and they're lacking just nutrients that are so important for their brain to function properly. Here's a case I consulted on. Individual had autism, a lot of self-regulation deficits, and this particular person had a lot of excessive screen time exposure. So we have excessive screen time exposure, prolonged sedentary behaviors. They seem to have an addictive tendency to coffee and caffeine, where they had just numerous cups of coffee every single day, tons of soda. They had very inconsistent energy patterns, lots of sugar consumption, and a lot of nighttime eating behavioral patterns. So all of these things were very important target areas to be aware of that likely played into this client having more self-regulation deficits. Sandra, I'll stop there. I know we probably have some thoughts, questions, insights. I'll park the brakes.
Yeah, I was just looking at that slide, and it made me think of one of my kiddos who, likes the coffee, but they like it with a ton of sugar. They'll drink it late at night. They like the soda. They have a lot of screen time. The other stuff, I know you switched slides, so I can't see it all, but everything on that slide, very familiar with this particular kiddo. Yeah, thank you. Making inappropriate jokes is something that he's been known to do. We've had an issue with pornography with him. And now he does not have an autism diagnosis, but he does have an FASD diagnosis. So I'm seeing so much overlap in all of these different symptoms and concerns. And sometimes it's hard to know, right? Like, where is something coming from? Is it because of trauma? Is it because of FASD? Is it because of autism? And it's almost like I'm guessing it doesn't really matter which one is sort of driving the bus. We need to know what to do with it, right?
I think we definitely need to know what to do with it, but the more we can understand all of these puzzle pieces, and there's a lot of puzzle pieces, and it's overwhelming probably when someone's listening to this. That is why I think when you like try to form a team of professionals, if you can understand the very basics, theory of mind, alexithymia, metacognition, blood sugar issues, constipation, the more you can piece that together and really rule those things out, we're ruling out big pieces of the puzzle that could be indirectly or directly driving the bus with why that child has behavioral problems, why they have such a hard time sitting still in the classroom, and the list goes on.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets Neurobehavioral Model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
We need to be aware of sensory processing issues. That's a huge factor in this population and most kids with a neurodevelopmental disorder. So when you are looking at this holistically, I think it's important to work with a sensory specialist and occupational therapist. Like all the talks we've done in this series, I've brought up the topic of food insecurity, and there is some literature in the autism world that we also need to be aware that for some families, raising a child, teenager, or adult with autism, they may be dealing with food insecurity. That could be another piece of this puzzle. And we also can't forget about our caregivers, because we love raising our children, but it can be stressful sometimes, and there's a lot of burden. And when parents are stressed out, maybe there's more meal skipping. Maybe we're going through the drive-through, we're ordering out a pizza just to save time, and we're just trying to survive. I get it. Easier said than done, but those kind of things can actually increase stress in the family situation. And then our last section today, I know we're going through this kind of quickly, but again, there's 3 other parts to this, and all of this is reiterated over and over and over again. How do we take this and apply it to tips, strategies, solutions, interventions when you're working in conjunction with qualified specialists? Like any child situation, a one-size-fits-all never works, in my opinion, because everybody is different culturally, economically, behaviorally, genetically. We need to have individualized approaches. We need to have holistic approaches. I'm a huge fan of mind-body interventions, really taking into account the whole person. And that's why I love the field of lifestyle medicine. We take into account sleep and nutrition and exercise and social health and what kind of chemicals does the person need, and the list goes on. We also need to be aware of the biopsychosocial model. I've been giving more talks on this to many groups, and I think this is a great model to consider if you're working with kids, teenagers, or adults with any kind of neurodivergent condition. So you're taking into account biological factors, psychological, social factors. It's a very holistic approach. If you're taking into account biological factors, you're going to have an appreciation for blood sugar dysregulation, hormones, gut dysbiosis, and the list goes on. Psychological factors, we all know that, depression, anxiety, mood, social factors. How does the person get along with other people? Are they isolating? The more we can take all those things into account, then we can help the person more holistically. This slide here is a broad overview of the biopsychosocial model. We're taking into account the client's thinking patterns, cultural factors, sometimes genetics. If you have the opportunity to work with like a genetics counselor, that's an emerging area. I love that area. Way outside my expertise, but I had a family member go to a genetics counselor recently, and we learned some great data on what was going on with that person medically. So it's very holistic, as you can see here, a lot of things going on, but we have to be aware of this because humans have a lot of things going on.
Mhm.
Most of the things I'm talking about in this series don't have to be done face to face. So maybe you live in a rural area. Maybe you're saying to yourself, well, I don't know any providers that have these expertise. Well, look beyond your area. Look into telehealth. Look into telecoaching, teletherapy. Join a telesupport group. All kinds of things. And this slide here, a really nice article from 2022, that just talks about there's all kinds of different services that we can use through a telehealth approach to help people with autism improve overall functioning. Other important target areas to be aware of, if you were to go through the literature and go through hundreds and hundreds of articles on autism, it's very safe to say when you're working with somebody with autism and all of these things we're talking about today, we need to be aware of targeting social skills, enhancing gut health, focusing on enhancing communication, improving diet quality, working on enhancing emotional recognition, and improving sleep health. All of these things go hand in hand. So if you're only focusing on one and you're asking yourself, well, it doesn't seem to be getting better. I've been going to this therapist over and over and over again, but nothing seems to stick. Well, have you considered maybe it's one piece of the puzzle? And the more you can put these puzzle pieces together, then you have the whole completed picture that will likely lead to better outcomes. But again, easier said than done because most professionals don't have expertise in all these areas. You might have to piece it together with a nutritionist, speech language communication pathologist, a gut health expert, a sleep expert, a therapist. It gets overwhelming, I know. In the nutrition literature specific to autism, what it says in a nutshell: screen for this, assess for this, work with professionals, rule out any dietary issues, rule out any eating, feeding disorders, rule out sensory sensitivities. Maybe the person's on a bunch of medications. And I'm not against medications. I'm not saying anything about that, but maybe the person's on a ton of medications. And some of those medications are contributing to side effects that could be impacting this. Learning skills, not just for the individual, but the entire family system can learn skills. Get a coach, in-home supports, telehealth. There's a lot of things we can do. This is a really neat article that was published last year, 2025. There's so many articles I could have shared with you. There's hundreds and hundreds of things published on autism and cooking and eating and diet, but this is a neat article. What would happen if every family who had a child, teenager, adult with a neurodevelopmental disorder would take a cooking class together? I think that would be kind of neat. It's a great teaching tool. This particular article talked about taking a cooking education program as a family. It was a great way to build skills in the area of nutrition. And we can't forget about the psychological interventions. In the autism world, there are so many interventions out there. When we talk about FASD, not as much. Autism, there's just so many modalities and programs out there. There's just too many to count. But we need to be aware of holistic approaches, not just focusing on the psychological interventions, which there's many out there, and these are all great. But if we can incorporate nutrition, sleep health, gut health into this equation, it probably will lead to better outcomes. Thank you, everyone. I know this was the shortest module of all of them, but hopefully this gives you something to think about. And again, here's my email address. Reach out anytime. And Sandra, thank you so much for having me back.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Brown. We are just thrilled to have you throughout this whole month of January. You brought us these 4 amazing episodes. And if you listen to all 4 of them and put them together, it is just a wealth, an abundance of information that we can sort through and apply and learn from. And we're just so grateful that you take your time to be with us and to share these things with us. And I know you'll be back. We'll be back in, I believe, in a couple of months where you're going to be doing a session on Lego therapy, correct?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I've been doing more talks on that now, and I think it's an area we need to consider as a cost-effective intervention that's probably not going to cause any side effects. There's some great literature out there for autism, some on brain injuries, not so much in the FASD world, but to me, it's a no-brainer. The FASD community would do well starting to incorporate some Lego-based interventions into the good work they already do.
Yeah, I think the only side effects when it comes to Legos is when the parent steps on them with their bare feet. Having personal experience with that.
Yeah, yeah, or the child has a tendency to like grab things and want to swallow it. We'll talk about
Yeah,
all those
yeah.
things in there, but yeah, definitely looking forward to coming back.
Well, thank you so much again for being with us throughout this whole series. Dr. Brown, we appreciate your expertise and just your willingness to share with us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, my friend. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed this series with Dr. Jerrod Brown on nutrition. There are 4 full episodes. If you just happen to catch this one, go back into the queue and check out our last 3 episodes. We did a whole series on nutrition. The first one was on nutrition from a trauma lens, and then we focused on FASD, ADHD, and then this week, of course, we focused on autism. So I hope that you will check all of them out. And if you have time, make sure you watch them on YouTube so you can see Dr. Brown's slides because he had some great visuals to go along with all 4 of these episodes. And I'm grateful that you have spent this important time with us. Don't forget to scroll down in the show notes and find the link where you can register to win a free signed copy of Soul Care Saturday 52 Devotions for foster and adoptive moms. And then each month, I offer at least one free live intro to FASD. It's an online workshop. It's not a recording. It's live, so you can ask questions and as we go. And at the end, I do Q&A. So there's always at least one of those every month. I typically also offer a 3-hour workshop that is, I use the facets neurobehavioral approach to FASD, which actually applies to any neurobehavioral condition, whether it's autism or ADHD, FASD, trauma, any of the things. The facets neurobehavioral model is an approach that focuses on the brain differences and supporting our children and with accommodations and support so that they can be successful. So I have online and in-person workshops. You can go to our website, justicefororphansny.org, where you can see the schedule and register for any of the ones that you want to participate in. And starting February 19th, I'm offering a 5 session. So it's once a week for 5 weeks, 3 hours each time. It's wired differently. And that is using the facets neurobehavioral model. And that is an excellent workshop that, for parents, for caregivers, for professionals, for anyone working with our kids, whether they have FASD or ADHD or autism or all of the above or any of the above. It's an excellent workshop. You will get a certificate of completion for the 15 hours of content, which you can use for your continuing credit and your training hours to become a licensed, to be a licensed foster parent and so on. So we do offer those as well. So details and registration on our website, justicefororphansny.org. You'll also be able to find all of our other resources there, those special episodes with Dr. Jerrod Brown that we talked about, as well as our support group and signing up for parent coaching, all of the things. My latest blog post is on there. Check that all out. Again, the YouTube channel where all the video versions of this podcast live is at the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on our social media at the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. And I am grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I'm grateful and thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.